What's up, y'all? My name is Prince, and I want to talk to y'all about the problem with Aikido students. Now, this is all based on what I observed when I visited an Aikido school back in Nashville about 5 years ago. And I talked about that visit in my video, The Problem with Aikido, but I didn't say everything that I wanted to say in the video, which is why I'm making a follow-up video. So before I dive into everything, I want to share something that Rokas said recently in his video, Was I Wrong About Aikido?
It is more important to ask not if Aikido works, but if it is trained in a way which leads to it working.
Now, this line about if Aikido is being trained in the right way is exactly what I was driving at as the problem with Aikido in my last video. But before I start to unpack everything, let me backtrack just in case you didn't actually see the last video. Okay, so I study an internal martial art called Zhong Ili Chin. Just to keep things simple, I'll say that this is very similar to Taijiquan because it's based on the Taiji Principles. And I got my start in Chinese martial arts with Wushu while I was in the Navy because I was planning to become a stuntman after I finished my contract. So I was looking to check out a local Aikido school in Nashville because I knew there was a lot of choreographed routines. I would get to practice learning how to fall and take and roll, and I was also hoping to be able to practice with a lot of people who I thought were doing something internal. Now look, if you don't know what I mean when I say that I wanted to be able to practice with people who were doing something internal, well, I'll just say that if you study Aikido, then you just might also be a victim to what I consider to be the problem with Aikido. And well, if you know how things went on my visit, I would say that I'm not the only one. At the end of the class, the other instructor spoke with me about my martial arts experience, and he started asking me about my other teachers. He told me something was missing from the Aikido curriculum because some teachers had it, and all the techniques that the students learned to reach their black belt, that all kind of goes out the window, and all these teachers who have it can do whatever they want as soon as they touch you. And he said it seems to be some big secret within the Aikido community. And this right here is the problem with Aikido. There's something missing in the curriculum. So to go back to what Rokas said, there's a question about if Aikido is being trained the right way. So when I talk about the problem with Aikido, the first thing I saw was what the Aikido instructor said to me after class, that there's some instructors who have it and many who don't. And when he said the missing it, he was talking about Aiki. Now, according to Wikipedia, Aiki is a Japanese Budo term, and at its most basic is a principle that allows a conditioned practitioner to negate or redirect an opponent's power. Now, in Chinese internal martial arts, we refer to this ability to redirect an attack as Peng Jin. Sometimes my teacher calls it Taiji energy because it's the first skill that you need to make Tai Chi work as a martial art. If you don't have Peng, you're basically just waving your arms in the air, which is why you see these Tai Chi people getting beat by people like Su Xiaodong. They don't have Peng on top of the fact that, well, they don't know how to fight. Now, on the last video, a few Aikido practitioners disagreed with me about Aikido missing the training to develop Aiki or Peng Jin. But I didn't make up what I said. The Aikido instructor at the school I visited told me what was missing. And around that same time, I actually had someone write me who said almost the exact same thing. So about 4 years ago, I received a note from a subscriber who's been studying Japanese martial arts for about 20 years. He's currently living in Japan and studying Aikido. Now, he said that during his time studying Aikido, he's had teachers who taught like they were trying to teach from a book, to at least 2 teachers who did things that he really couldn't explain. He said when they touched you, it felt like you had nothing and were being pulled into a hole, even though it looked like they weren't even doing anything to you. And if you're listening to this person's description and it doesn't sound real, look, he's repeating my experience from the first time that I trained with my teacher, Sam F.S. Chin. I had that same exact experience. So getting back to this message, he goes on to say that many Aikido schools are trying to get back to their roots, and many people believe that this is rooted in Chinese internal martial arts. The talk online in Aikido circles about the teachers who are doing it refers to not just internal martial arts, but also having it, meaning they have Peng Jin or Aiki. Again, Peng Jin is not some magic chi fighting nonsense. It just refers to what we say in English as ward off. Ward off is not just a posture, it's a quality that the body has or a skill that you're able to do as a result of the proper training to develop Tai Chi skill. So that brings us to the question as to how O-Sensei developed this skill. Now, in the first video, I said that O-Sensei may have been exposed to the Chinese internal martial arts, Bagua Zhong, and Xingyi Qin during his brief stints in China. And this was actually hypothesized by Bruce Francis, who studied with O-Sensei between 1967 and 1969. It's true that O-Sensei was at the Manchurian front during the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s. O-Sensei also returned to China in 1924, where he tried to aid the leader of the Black Dragon Society in establishing a religious kingdom in Mongolia. O-Sensei was captured by Chinese soldiers and later released to the Japanese consul. And O-Sensei would also return to China on at least 3 occasions from 1939 to 1942 as a visiting martial arts instructor to an area that was occupied by Japanese forces during World War II. Although there are numerous articles written by Aikido practitioners attempting to debunk what Bruce Francis hypothesized in his book, The Power of Internal Martial Arts and Chi, the question still remains as to where O-Sensei would have learned the internal development evident in his Aikido and why it is not part of the formal Aikido curriculum taught to students. I mean, Bruce Francis wrote this book about his experiences with various internal martial arts, but at the end of the day, Bruce is looking to get people interested in Bagua and the Taoist practices that he teaches. So it makes sense that he would say, oh yeah, after years reflecting on my experiences training with O-Sensei and looking at lots of video footage, I think he studied Bagua's footwork and applications and a little bit of Xingyi's power development. But here's something else to consider. One of the articles I read debunking Kumar's claim about O-Sensei acknowledges the extensive training that Ueshiba had under his Aikijutsu instructor, along with the years of meditation practices that he was exposed to as part of the Omoto religious sect. So it turns out that Scott Meredith, who ran the internal martial arts blog site as Tabby Cat for years while living in Japan, has also written a book specifically on the topic of training Aiki, and he posits that O-Sensei did get exposed to the internal training in Chinese martial arts, but he was exposed to it in the other martial arts and meditative practices that he did, which culminated in him creating the art of Aikido. So the problem that I see with a lot of Aikido students is that they want to play the game without actually doing the work. And what I mean is that they see what O-Sensei did and they want to do that too. Like O-Sensei has a student who runs at him. O-Sensei waves his arm and the student falls. Now, whether there's something really going on there with O-Sensei displaying like some kind of internal skills or leading the student's mind is a topic for a different discussion. But what matters here is that a lot of Aikido students see the technique, they repeat the technique, and then this becomes the gospel truth regarding what proper Aikido is. But they don't have the training and the experiences that O-Sensei had, which might actually make it work. An example is when you see Chin Tai Chi master Qin Xiaowang doing Fa Jin or explosive movements when he does his Tai Chi form. But when you see some beginning students stomping on the ground and doing all of this stuff to imitate Qin Xiaowang, it's like they are doing it, but they don't have any real power behind the movements. So to hammer home this point, here's a story that I didn't tell in the last Aikido video about my visit to the Aikido dojo in Nashville. Now after the class, this one lady who was kind of like the self-appointed leader of that particular group of students, she was talking about how she wanted to invite her roommate out to class. And she said the problem is that he wouldn't be a good uke because he basically wouldn't comply with the techniques. And I kept looking at her funny like, well, I mean, why does that make him bad? Like, I understand when people are doing a drill, there's an understanding between the two of them. This is what we're looking to train. These are the rules for the game that's being played. The problem is that it really feels like all of the Aikido curriculum is like that. I mean, I've had people tell me in the comments of my last video all about what would happen if I visit a real Aikido school. And the truth is that if I decided to not play the game and comply with the technique that's being demonstrated, I would have just pushed them out of the position, or, you know, thrown a real jab where someone wouldn't grab my wrist and start going all Steven Seagal on me. Or in the true Tai Chi sense, I could have just yielded and then threw them on the ground. But I mean, I was trying to practice good martial Wu-Da by not disrespecting their school or their practice. And the fact that I was allowing myself to be thrown because I wanted to genuinely see what Aikido was about should be a reminder to that particular group of Aikido students that the stuff that they were doing worked because someone allowed it to be done to them. I could have easily resisted at any point because of the little bit of internal training that I'd done at that time. And if they really wanted to be able to neutralize or overpower me, they probably would have needed to do the same. But it seems to be missing from the curriculum at a lot of Aikido schools. So look, I've been harping on about how the real internal development and training Aiki is missing from the overall Aikido curriculum. And I know a lot of Aikido students have watched the last video and this one thinking, well, you don't even practice Aikido, so how do you even know? Well, look, I first started to become aware of this because I was seeing all of these demonstration videos of my Sifu at Aikido dojos impressing them with his skills. So I had someone comment on the last video that my Sifu was actually impressed by the students at their school. And my big bro Ashigs confirmed that. So there's definitely a few schools out there teaching it. And look, I never claimed that there wasn't. The whole issue with the Aikido curriculum first came to my attention by a guy who was actually an Aikido instructor by the name of Dan Harden. I was first introduced to Dan Harden by Scott Meredith in his Taijiquan blog, and I mentioned him earlier. And he said that Dan was one of the best internal arts people that he'd ever touched. And most of the people I've read about who train with Dan, they rave about him, but he's still a bit of a controversial character in the Aikido community. I mean, the worst thing I'd heard about him was that if you go to one of his seminars, look, you might get beaten up. I mean, the guy is talking about internal training for Aikido, and he's wearing MMA gloves, and I guess it's a big no-no in the Aikido community. But he talks about doing yoga, meditation, qigong exercises, lifting weights, training with kettlebells, and combat sports, all in an Aikido setting. And I mean, if Rokas had not completely shut the door on Aikido, it would have been cool to see him link up with Dan Harden, because he seems like a guy who knows how to make Aikido work in combat sports and in the real world without having years of experience as a bodyguard or a doorman like a lot of these other big guys I see who would probably mostly turn their Aikido into some form of judo. But look, there's nothing wrong with judo, just to be clear. But I'm just saying, look, size matters. If a big guy can throw people smaller than them around and call it Aikido, does that really mean that that same technique is going to work when a smaller person tries it? So, I mean, that's why I highly recommend, if you even question any of what I'm saying, look, go find Dan Harden. I've never met him in person. I know people who have. I know he's got something. And if you really want to get a taste of how deep the rabbit hole of Aikido really goes beyond just learning a bunch of techniques until you get your black belt, I would go see what that guy has. But I mean, that's just me. I've already got a good teacher. Look, if you didn't already see part 1 of this video, The Problem with Aikido, you should check it out. It'll help this video make a bit more sense. But I mean, really, I don't have much more to say on the topic of Aikido right now. But I am reading up on training the Aiki. So if you Aikido folks want to hear more on that, stay tuned. But I kind of want to get back to talking about Bruce Lee and the problems I see in internal martial arts, you know, like the stuff I actually study. So be on the lookout for videos on those topics, like why Bruce Lee hated Tai Chi. But look, that's something to look forward to. But anyway, hey y'all, thanks for watching. Y'all keep on breathing, and I'll see you on the next video.